Hello and welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie, and today I'm delighted to be joined by two excellent customer experience pros to discuss the hesitancy that many contact centers have over cloud contact center migrations and perhaps some of the reasons behind that. Yesterday, I'm delighted to be joined by John Arnold, principal of J Arnold Associates, and Matt McKernan, senior vice president of the Americas at Content Guru. Thanks very much both for joining me, and let's get right into this topic. And this is kind of such a topical subject within the kind of enterprise communications space at the moment. With a Gartner analyst recently telling us at CX Today that at least 70% of agents are still working from legacy infrastructures, and the vast majority of those kind of agents working from on-premise infrastructures, working for large enterprises. Given this stat, and John, maybe I'll start with you on this. Why are some of the reasons that large enterprise contact centers not moving into the cloud?
Sure. Okay. So Charlie, and welcome here, Matt. It's good to be on this call together. So there is a bit of a, there's a bit of a willing but not able, and not willing and not able. There's a little bit of both here. So the contact centers, especially in large enterprises, right, for a longest time have been kind of freestanding operations. They kind of work outside the realm of everything else. They may not even be in the same geography as head office folks or whatever, but those operations are quite, in most cases, I think you'd agree, Matt, pretty mature, that they have been in place for a long time, built off of legacy hardware platforms that have probably taken many years to evolve. And they tend to be very complex kind of, spider webs of integrations from various vendors, because the contact centers have always, because they've operated outside the mainstream of everyday enterprise operations, they have a lot of purpose-built technology. And it's mostly hardware still. Yes, a lot of it has become software, but they're not fully digital. They're not fully cloud-based environments by any stretch. So if you are looking to make a change to that environment, it's kind of like if you've lived in the same house for 45 years and you said, you know what, it's time to downsize. It probably takes another 10 years till you're actually ready to do it, because it's just such an enormous task. And it's not just about technology. I think, Matt, you'd agree. A lot of it is the skill set, right? The mindset of the IT team and the culture of that organization that has probably been building their careers on having all of this stuff in place from legacy vendors and getting it to work just right for what their needs are. It's like you have an old car you've built and kind of like taken care of, for forever. And now it's like, oh, I can't get parts anymore. And now it becomes a bit of a problem. And they're realizing, I think a lot of these operations know that the cloud is the future, that AI and digital channels are kind of where it's going. But the task of making that shift is very, very daunting, to say the least, especially when you think about coming out of COVID. Everyone's under pressure to not just adapt to the new realities, but to reduce costs and to say, you know what, the investments involved to move off of this are going to be pretty scary to make. Beside now that's practical stuff. There's so that difference between willing and not able and not willing and not able. So the not willing and not able is also to do with the environment you're in, the industry that you're based in. It could be very highly regulated: healthcare, education, finance, insurance, sectors that have a lot of rules and regs and requirements for data security, data privacy, patient records, financial records, these kind of things. That's a tough thing to get around and say, am I really willing or able to consider moving that confidential data, not just into the cloud, but potentially out of my sovereign jurisdiction? Because once it goes into a public cloud environment, right, there may be multiple sites where that data ends up being stored. And it's not just to spread it around, but also for redundancy purposes for the data center operators, right? Amazon, Azure, etc. So there are considerations there that might be practical, but also due to, legal and compliance issues. So there are industries that realistically may never fully go to the cloud, at least in today's environment. That could change over time, but that's another different practical reality. So I think I'll leave the conversation there. I think we could build on this for a while, Matt, but I think those are the two big scenarios in my mind as to why there's still so much prem in the contact center space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was a really great overview, John. I don't know, Matt, though, if there's anything you'd maybe like to kind of add on to that.
Yeah, I think the challenges obviously are with a large operational shift. It as John points out, it represents a lot of risk. So certainly the reward, as any migration, the reward has to outweigh the risk. Number one, and really it's two different elements. It's a little different than some of the other applications. Contact center, you've got the applications that actually serve up the data, for an agent. But then there's this whole network and communications element that is multifaceted. It's voice, it's email, it's chat, it's all these different avenues. And so it's a big, complex project. I liken it to plumbing. You're going to rip the plumbing out of your house, put new plumbing in. You probably have to be looking at a pretty serious problem. And to John's point, it's kind of like the leak has now gotten larger every year in the house, and the roof is starting to crumble a little bit because the leak's getting larger. So many of these larger enterprises are, over the next couple of years, really forced to make a move. Maybe they've got a big forced upgrade because it's end of life or end of service, the platform that they are on. But it takes all these elements to be, right place, right time for them to say, yes, this is the year we're going to make a switch to our contact center and move it into the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, lots of really great stuff. And I'm sure there are lots of enterprise contact centers that maybe kind of taken a look at that plumbing, 2 or 3 times, kind of seen the amount of kind of work that it might take, and then maybe thought, I'm going to leave it another year, and then leave it another year. And maybe it takes 3 inspections, as I believe we've spoke about before, Matt, for them,
Sure.
for a contact center to finally make the move. But when they're making those sort of inspections, what maybe workloads do large enterprises typically struggle to maybe move?
Yeah, well, it's certainly they worry about the connectivity first, and am I going to change that? I think the workload in general of the contact center, it's mission critical, right? So that's where the challenges start. These phone calls have to get in and out of the contact center, and you can't have any downtime because then your business is down. So I think that just the sheer fact that it's a mission critical function for most large enterprises puts a lot of focus on reliability and security, and just, how bulletproof is this platform that we're moving to, both for operational stability and then also security. How secure is that platform? And then beyond that, the workloads. A lot of times they're trying to add, right? We're going to move to the cloud because we want to maybe add another digital channel. Maybe the contact center wants to start servicing customers on social media, and that's something that they haven't done before. So moving from no social media to a social media avenue creates a lot of work, and creates the need for a partner who's done that and can guide them. So there's the work that they've done on the old platform that they're kind of just going to lift and shift. And then there's all these new elements that, quite frankly, they want to take advantage of. That's one of the big values that they get when they move to the cloud. Most of the large providers out there in our industry, contact center as a service, CCaaS industry, now offer omni-channel solutions. So you're not just moving to a new platform, you're moving to a lot of avenues that are new to you. And how do I leverage that? And how do I skill my agents so that they can handle multiple channels? So those are some of the larger workload challenges that we see in transition to cloud.
Yeah, and I think that actually goes very nicely back to John's earlier point of kind of, it's not only kind of the technology shift, but it's the people shift that comes along along with the challenge as well. And I think, yeah, lots of really great points in there. And I do, obviously, John, you mentioned sectors earlier, and I do kind of want to kind of shine a light on one particularly hesitant sector to move to the cloud, and that is the public sector. And I've got some really good statistics on this from the Center for Strategic and International Studies that kind of cement this kind of theory that this is a sector that's particularly hesitant to move. And anyway, this research organization found that the US government spent over $100 billion in the fiscal year 2022 on IT, even though 12 billion went to cloud services, and more than half went to the maintenance of legacy systems that are more vulnerable to hacking and whose upkeep is costly. So given such stats, John, I wonder if you could kind of what should contact center vendors be doing to ease the concerns of the public companies in the public sector?
Well, I think the ease of concern is a good approach because the technology does work for starters. A few years ago, when cloud migration was in its earlier phases, right, there were legitimate with scale and reliability and security. And if anything good came out of the pandemic, at least in our world, is the forced shift that companies had to go to be online and to support remote work. Put unprecedented demands on networks, on the connectivity you mentioned earlier, Matt. And we couldn't have continued with business operations during the pandemic without being able to support that change. And if that, in my view, cloud passed just a test that could be like, I can't imagine more difficult conditions to kind of prove the technology than what we went through in the pandemic. When you think about it, right? No one was prepared, yet it stood up. The resilience was there. And, the underlying features of the cloud that make it really valuable is this scale capability and speed, things that go kind of beyond. It's like space exploring, right? You have like new dimensions of doing things that prem and legacy just can't do. It has built-in limitations. So if within public sector, I think you come back to that issue of trust. So first of all, we are at a stage where capacity is not an issue. So the amount of data that you have is not really an issue, because it used to be, remember, that storage was expensive, right? And so now we're in this mode. You look at the push to 5G for mobile. A lot of that's driven by video and streaming. I mean, bandwidth intensive applications. So we have networks in place that can handle that now. So there shouldn't be any concerns of that. And of course, public sector is still lagging in terms of converting from analog to digital. So a lot of, paper-based records still need to be digitized and added to that kind of feedstock that goes into the cloud. But we talk about easing concerns is not only do we have a safe home for this data, but once you have it in that home, you can extract so much more value out of it. So we have, on public sector, when you start talking about how do you justify, budgetary priorities, how do you ensure that consumers are consumers? See, that's what they're talking. Citizens are getting proper access to service where you can now migrate your operations. Remember, you move everyone online. So we have need for in-person offices for people to go to. Look at how much more efficiently we can do things like license renewals, going online, completing census forms. We're doing a lot of this now, but you can do it on a much higher level, more efficient. You talk about ease of concern. You're making your internal administrative workload less because you can automate so much more in the cloud. You talked about spending, what was it, 12 billion on maintenance, right, within the government. I mean, these are huge costs that we know are only going to get higher. I know, Matt, you talk about end of life, right? We know a lot of the legacy vendors and infrastructure, is only going to be able to last so long because the vendors have all pushed onto cloud. So what vendors can say is, listen, whatever you're using that's prem based, we know that those deployments are going to have to move to cloud eventually. And that's good because a lot of that expensive upkeep that you're spending money on now is going to go away. Now you can support those ongoing services. And another thing to ease the discomfort is we all like, everyone likes owning renting. It just is. But you can't own that infrastructure anymore. It's too expensive to do. And what we want to show them is the vendors talking now. Listen, yes, you're shifting from an own to a rent model where you're going to have perpetual costs that you didn't have in the prem world. However, when you shift to cloud, you're going to have new capabilities that will increase the value of that spend, right? It's not like you're going from prem to cloud for something that's apples to apples. No, why would I rent something that has the same value as I owned it? Now you're renting something, so to speak, that has value that continues to increase because the technologies keep evolving. Prem-based technologies are not evolving, right? We've moved on. We're not investing in that anymore. All the vendors will tell you that. We're investing in cloud. That's where the innovation is going to be. That's where the kind of the long tail benefits of, technology adoption are coming from, right? So unless you're prepared to give that all away, say we're just going to go back to pencil, paper, not use technology, it's not a problem. But that, right? So I think there's more messaging there that the vendors can be doing, all while respecting the fact that privacy and security is of utmost importance. So they have to show why and how their systems are, because I hate to say it, we keep hearing about breaches all the time, which tend to be caused by human error, by the way. And that's another message maybe that vendors can reinforce. The technology is not necessarily faulty. It's just that we have to do a better training people to use the technology responsibly. And then those problems will go away. Or not go away, but they'll be more manageable, make it easier to justify going to cloud.
Yeah, again, lots of really great stuff there. And Matt, it'll be good to hear your thoughts on this too, and what kind of Content Guru is doing specifically to support kind of contact centers and easing that transition, especially in the public sector.
Sure. So Content Guru, my company, is always had a very storied history with supporting the public sector. We support National Health Service in the UK. If you call an ambulance or call for a police dispatch in the UK, it's likely riding on our Storm platform. So we came to market with this attitude of, it must be up at all times. And these have to be bulletproof, mission critical type deployments. And we've only been a cloud vendor. So we've taken that attitude to the public sector. We do a healthy part of our business overall is in the public sector. And that's what we started here in the U.S., where we're growing our business. We do support a couple large cabinet level agencies that deal with security here in the U.S. And so they have high requirements. One of the biggest things we're doing for the public sector to get them more comfortable to move to a cloud contact center solution is we've been in the process, and we are happy to announce we'll be getting our FedRAMP High authorization in a couple months here this summer. We've been at it for several years. Getting FedRAMP of any type is very difficult. I was at another leading CCaaS vendor when they got their FedRAMP moderate. But we believe the high FedRAMP ATO is where the market really is waiting for, because we just talked about the stats of why haven't more public entities moved to the cloud. Back in 2010, roughly, there was a U.S. federal government initiative called Cloud First, which, as John mentioned, on-premise legacy platforms are very expensive to deploy and to maintain. So what the federal government was saying was, when you buy technology going forward, take a look at Cloud First. It's gotten much stronger. It's gotten much better. We know it's going to be more efficient and more economical. And I think as the agencies and the public sector entities did that, they found some concerns, right? So now, basically 10 years later in 2020, the federal government released kind of an update to that, to Cloud First, which became Cloud Smart, which was, here's Obviously it's 10 years later, the internet's really grown, and it's become common for cloud to be the de facto choice of technology deployment. But they built these pillars in cloud smart to say, but the first pillar is security. And it is Content Guru's belief that security is first and foremost, security and resiliency. So that is why we invested in the FedRAMP High capability. We'll be the only CCaaS vendor in the market with FedRAMP High attestation. And we feel like those extra controls, those extra security measures that are required of High, it's much harder to attain it, but we went for that certification because of our experience in the public sector, knowing that they're always going to want beyond what's available today. They're going to want to be, ready for the next threat. And so the FedRAMP High, we believe, will kind of break the logjam to get these public sector entities comfortable in moving. And first and foremost, they'll know it's secure. And they know that it has all the capabilities that they need. Because oftentimes the public sector, and we work in both the public and the private sector generally has more feature function requirements. The public sector is all about security and reliability. And that's why we're delivering a FedRAMP High platform this summer.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, because I think a lot of people may have seen a lot of other CCaaS vendors come out with their FedRAMP, but the moderate version that you mentioned there too. And actually, I didn't even realize there was a high one. So I'm sure that's a big consideration for a lot of public sector companies. And maybe when vendors like Content Guru achieve that may be a big boost for that sector in terms of cloud migrations. But maybe kind of just to finish off and zooming back out to all sectors, it'd be great to ask you both kind of what complex enterprise contact centers can look for in a CCaaS provider. And John, I'll maybe turn to you first on this.
Sure. Yeah, Charlie. I mean, this is a topic that really should just be its own podcast. One of the fundamental considerations is when you're talking about cloud is, okay, if I want to be looking at contact center, you have basically, I don't know, I'd like to say 3 types of vendors out there to work from. You have, and Content Guru is a good example of this, the cloud native players who have only been cloud based, and so their solutions are digital first, cloud first, very AI driven. So this is all they do. They're single focus, that they're contact center, so they go deep and they have really very good purpose built solutions, and they tend to lead the market. You then have the legacy vendors who have been in the contact center space for a long time, and these players have also, for the most part, they have also adopted or have other portfolios. So you can look at whatever Cisco, Avaya, companies that have a strong telephony background. That's kind of the front door into a lot of contact center deployments, and then they have the contact center platform itself. But they also have very strong components in the UC sector. So unified communications as a service. And what a lot of those vendors are doing are they're coming to market with a combined or an integrated type of offering where they have an underlying kind of AI driven kind of platform that supports kind of 2 or 3 pillars of UCaaS, CCaaS, and a lot of times CPaaS. And they can tie all that together. So that's more of a more horizontal approach to cloud, where there's a case to be made, not for everybody, but to deploy a mix of UC and contact center from the same solution. That's not for everybody, but that's a big part of the market. And then you have the cloud native guys who are, you maybe unintentionally used the word Zoom to start your question, but they were the cloud native cloud native UCaaS and CCaaS players who are not just CCaaS. So yes, Content Guru is a good single purpose vendor, but then you've got the Rings, the Vonages, and even Zoom, who have started out as cloud based players, but they didn't start out in contact center. but they have kind of migrated to that space because it's such a big migration opportunity. So when you're considering what to look for in a vendor, you could go wide, you could go deep. Some vendors can do both very well, right? But the point is that some are very focused just on that space, and some have very strong vertical expertise, right? But then the others are more broader, and you may say, well, while we're on our cloud journey, it's a bigger story than just contact center. We're kind of rethinking the whole thing. Then you would have a case to look more broadly to consider others. But there's also no shortfall in going with a best of breed approach for everything. Like, in other words, pick the best contact center vendor you can find, pick the best UCaaS solution you can find a way to make them work. It doesn't have to be from the same player. What's important, of course, is how they integrate and how well they play together. And I think, Matt, you could probably speak to that. That's one consideration of many. But let's kind of jump in here, Matt, and see what else you want to add to that.
Sure. I think the larger enterprises that are considering, their first cloud, because there's actually there's a generation of contact centers who did jump to cloud, 5-6 years ago, back when it was a little younger as a space. And so now you've got a more informed buyer for their second time around, right? Now they didn't know what they didn't know back then. And now they know what they like and what they don't like, and what are the things that they wish they could get. One of the things that we focus on here at Content Guru is we do have a full stack omni-channel solution. We actually do provide UC and actually even have a CRM solution as well. So when you look at the market, most of the larger, leading vendors in the space have a full capability. When you look at their product suite, there's not a whole lot that they can't do, and Content Guru is no different in that fashion. What we focus on is what we feel the major needs of the market are that haven't necessarily been met. So we look at the business as becoming an operational partner of the customer. We're a little different in that, while we're large enough, we're a global company, we support some of the largest contact centers in the world. So we're very enterprise capable. We also focus specifically on the larger, more complex environments. And so we don't have, 5,000 SMB customers like maybe some of our competitors do. We focus on the larger, more complex deployments and do that well. Because that's what I heard my time in the industry. And I used to work for a leader in the CCaaS space. And that's what I heard a lot of is, I'm not hurting for functionality. I'm hurting for reliability, and I'm hurting for security, and I'm really needing a better service model. And at Content Guru, that's what we are trying to deliver to the market. We rank number one in both the G2 as well as the Gartner Peer Insights reviews in terms of customer satisfaction. So we spend a lot of time on that, and we feel like that's probably the most important thing, especially for larger, more complex enterprises, is that finding an operational partner, not just finding a software vendor. Because these are large, complex environments that need care and feeding, not just when you go live, but a year, 2 years, 3 years after you've been live. And oftentimes it takes a while for the customer to fully utilize the platform. These are large, robust, platforms, and to get the value that they want, that they need out of it, because somebody signed up for that return on investment with that when they purchase these systems. That's an ongoing, everyday effort that we put in here at Content Guru.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody does want to learn more about any of those Content Guru solutions that you've mentioned there, Matt, I will leave a link in the description. Absolutely. But I think you both made some really great points there. And as John, you said, we could do a whole separate episode on this that lasts many hours. But I think that's a great place to end today's chat. It was a great conversation. So thank you both very much for joining me, and thanks everybody for watching. Bye for now.